Hello, and welcome to Poetry and Prose. I'm trying out a new thing today called Recent Readings, which is an opportunity for me to share books that I've been reading and talk about them and why they're special to me and why I enjoyed them. And perhaps maybe you will find them enjoyable, but also to create a discussion where in the comments you can say some books that you think are relevant or close to it or totally different but you think will be enjoyable or important. This is very much an area just to discuss the joy of reading and creativity and writing, all of that stuff. The book I want to celebrate today is The Little Prince. I'm not going to try and pronounce the author's name, so I'll just hold it up to the camera there. Um, I'm not brave enough. But it's quite tragic with the author because he died a year after he published this book. And it says so on the very back, where it says that it was first published in 1943, the year before the author's death in action. And it's quite sad in that sense, and it makes it a lot more interesting to read, I think, because as you work your way through the book and you see about the stuff he's saying about life, you realize he really didn't get to experience much of it, which is quite sad, and especially dying in warfare is never a brilliant way to go. So, Little Prince is a book that I have two copies of, as you might have seen. And the reason I have two copies of it is that this first one still has my little scratchings as a young boy on it, saying this book belongs to me. Now, I totally forgot I had that book. It obviously got lost in the back of an attic or a box or something. And so about 10 years ago, when I was speaking to someone and they were telling me I had to read The Little Prince, I said, well, I've never read it. And so they bought me a copy, which is this copy here, and I read it and fell in love. And it is interesting because the difference between these is quite stark. There's one's in color, one's got more illustrations in it, the translation is slightly different. So there is actually quite a big difference between the 20 or 10 years between these two books being published. But I had that one copy, and then my mother was clearing out the shelves and found this one again and returned it to me. So now I have two. The Little Prince is very interesting. It's mainly to me a story of not becoming a stuffy adult, which is something I've always rebelled against. Is this kind of boring final stage of life where you don't see joy in anything or get excited or have particularly big swings in any direction, and I can't relate to that. I still see the world in a very juvenile way, and that has its positives and negatives, but I'd much rather be like that than completely numb and going along in the big corporate machine, as they say. The book actually starts out with a dedication, not to one of his adult friends, but to the adult when he was a child, as a dedication, which I thought was quite amusing. And the book's got this kind of little sarcastic and humorous tone through it, a bit like Douglas Adams, who I'm currently reading. And I really appreciate that. And it's not a talking down to book either. It's a book for children, and children can enjoy it. But then I think with The Little Prince, it's very important you read it as a child and enjoy it for the silly pictures and the sheep in the box and all of these things and the adventures. But then you go back to it as an adult and read it, and you actually notice that there's quite a lot beneath that surface layer of silliness in the book that he put in when he visits the different planets and all of the people are representing different flaws of humanity and things like that. And my favorite scene is the one with the fox, where the little prince comes across the fox and says, "Can I interact with you?" And the fox says, "Well, no, I'm not tame." And the little princess says, "Okay, fine. Well, I've got to get going and everything anyway." And the fox says, "Oh, well, please tame me." And he goes through this back and forth of saying how monotonous his life is, and wouldn't it be wonderful if the little prince tames him, and then not only will the footsteps mean something to him, but he'll know it's his footsteps, not just anyone's footsteps. The little prince's footsteps will mean something. His hair will be the color of the wheat fields, so every time he goes past them, he'll be happy. And there's just this really romanticized view of connection, which is very true in a sense. It's what we do, but inevitably he comes to the end where the little prince had said at the very beginning he's got things to do and friends to make and places to see, and the little fox says he's going to cry now because he's heartbroken. He's been tamed. He's put himself out there and trusted, and he's been left. But as the exchange goes on, the little prince can't understand why he would have wanted to be hurt like that, but he says because of the wheat fields, and he doesn't really explain himself any more than that. And I really, really like that. And the little prince is also struggling with something he's tamed and whether he likes it or not, and if it's just the same as anything else and it's not special. But as the fox says, once you've tamed something, you're responsible for it forever, and there's nothing like it in the universe. Even if there's identical things, if you've tamed it, then it's yours now. And it's just a very beautiful way of doing it, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, where they've entered into relationships with people, friendships as well, not just romantic, where they've been tamed. And then that person has had to leave for a while or forever or move on or whatever happens. And they're left utterly dejected and heartbroken. But they still have the memories, and the memories are worth more than not having that interaction in the first place. And so the way the fox says, the wheat fields will still bring me joy, I feel the same with lots of places I go, or objects I have, or things I've done. I mean, even this book that was brought to me by that person is still very affectionate to me, because it was brought to me and brought for me to say that you need to read this. I think you'll really like it. And so that means so much more to me than if I'd gone and just picked it up randomly. But it's full of that stuff. And of course, he's quite symbolic for religion as well, and the Lord, the little prince, especially in the end of the book where he perishes and comes back. Um, and so I very much recommend it, and I think that there's a lot to be gained from it. I really enjoy it, and that's pretty much all I've got to say. But I hope you enjoy this new playlist. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.